Greetings, friends, and welcome to the periodic table of history. This is where we explore history in 4 dimensions. And you're looking at the time bar of history going back 6,000 years, all back to Adam, and then all the cultures on the earth, everything that I could put together in the northern hemisphere and also in the southern hemisphere. And so we see our time axes, and we're going to be talking about the connection between the Bible and then Greece and then Britain. So here is our 3 dimensions, and then our time bar is our 4th dimension. And this is a really fun study because it has genealogies that goes all the way from our time now back to Japheth, and then there are connections to Rome and Greece, and then back to the Bible, which are really fun to take a look at. We've looked at the sons of Japheth before, and these are approximate locations for where they initially set up, but then they moved from their locations along out into Europe. And also, some of them swirled around into Africa, just like the Africans swirled up into Europe. And in the Middle East, it's a complete mix of all sorts of people, and et cetera, as we've gone around the world. But when we're talking specifically about Britain, I was curious about where it came from, and of course, building the project, I was also stunned to know there was so much data on it, and also data that's not really advertised. But let's just go up in here. We can see like Adam's going to start up here. We're going to have the flood right here with Shem, Ham, and Japheth. We have Greece starting here, and then we have Rome over here and Britain over here. When I was getting farther and farther along on this project, I found one of the popes named Eusebius that wrote a universal history, and he called it the chronicon. And in it, he put many of the kings lists that we see and that we have access to. Some of those still exist, some of them do not. Eusebius in the chronicon, he has several lists and then compilations, and as far as Greece goes, he talks about the Greek chronicle, and then Castor, and then the philosophical history of Porphyrius. Also the book of Diodorus, the writings of Porphyrius, the philosopher, and the book of Thales. So some of these we have, some of these we don't. Some of them we have pieces of them, and then we do have what's left of what Eusebius wrote down of them. And I think that that's really fun information, considering he was a pope and he also lived in Syria, which is a good place to get a good reference between the Greek culture and the Hebrew culture. But he was about 325 AD. He was pope. Actually, let's go in here and we can see where he is. I think it's around 310 or so. Ah, there he is. Eusebius, 310. So he was the one that put together the chronicon, which is a universal history. And that's the same thing that I was trying to do with this. But he did it in 325, and then I did it in 2011. It took 6 years to compile all the information. And then I've just recently updated it, so we do have some of the most current kings. So we can look in here, even up to currently 2020, the beginning of 2020. It was kind of fun updating this and just seeing how many changes went along in the world. There are revolutionary areas even going on right now. It's always happening. There's balkanization happening all the time. As the population increases, population centers gain power, and then they decide they don't want to be a part of the bigger unit, and they think they're big enough to be able to compete with the bigger unit. And you can see that along here. You can see that you start out with one, and then that breaks up into just a few groups. And then of course we see the 4 main genetic types, which are Noah, Shem, Ham, and Japheth. And then as that breaks up, then we see it break up some more, and then more, and then more. And that happens all over the world. You can see it here, say in Africa with the Berbers and the Bantu. Berbers in the north, and Egypt starts out with one group, and then you have the Berbers and you have the Bantu. So it's happening all the time. This balkanization is happening all the time. It's a function of population increase and limited amount of land. So Eusebius puts together the chronicon, and he has quite a few histories, but I found it really good as concerning the Greeks, because he says that Sicyon is the first area of Greek culture, and he has Aegialus as the first king. Bishop Ussher comes up with 2089 BC for Aegialus. And what's interesting is this area is the Aegean Sea, because he's the first king of Sicyonia here in the Greek world. And you can see the next king is Eurus. And these are just reminiscents, just looking at this and not having the absolute detail of all the origins of things. You see the second king is Eurus, and then it sounds so much like Europe. And I can't help but wondering, did Europe get its name from the second king of the Siconians? And so when you do a study like this and you have a lot of the data, you know, like because this pulls together just a massive amount of data. This is 100 feet wide, and then the text boxes have font 6 in them, so it's really a massive amount. It's fun to go through the Bible. It's fun to go through here, because here you can see the patriarchs of Abraham: Peleg, Ru, etc., Sereg, and then really famous is Abraham for the Islamic, Christian, and Jewish world: Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. But it's really fun to put their lifespans in here and just see how awesome it is to study any history. You can be in any history and kind of not really quite comprehending, like when we're talking about English history, and it says Vortigern went to war with the Saxon king Hengst, and then if you go in here, then you it's pronounced Vortigern, tyrant, going against the king Hengst. And then when you actually see that, when you have enough data, you can bump the cultures against each other, and then they start really panning out. Then that is really fun. So we're going to be traveling here to Greece, and then eventually we'll get down to modern world, because here's Elizabeth too. She's the longest reigning monarch of Britain, and I think that happened in 2019. So she's made history as far as the whole length of the British monarchy for 3,000 years. So that's huge stuff. We're living in fabulous times. But what we'll do is just we'll get us down to Brutus, I think, because maybe the video can be so long, and so when we go to Eusebius, the thing that's amazing is you see all these kings. If you stack them in here like this, then mathematically they would pan out like this. Each one of these text boxes is their life bar. So when that says 45 years, this is a representation of how long they lived. Actually, it's put in there exactly. And then, of course, history isn't really exact, because there are problems with some co-reigning kings, and sometimes we don't have the data. But all of these are supposed to be stacked in series. And when we get down here, we come to Troy, and that's what is really good. With Agamemnon, it's a person that we hear from pop culture, from Hollywood, making movies. The historical societies haven't thought much of Troy for most of existence, but then recently it had been uncovered. It was the late 1800s where excavation started for uncovering Troy. And then there was even they uncovered just a few things, a road using dynamite. That's kind of extreme, but they found the road, and then went on with more diggings. They found a tower, and then later, it wasn't until even in the 1988 until the 1990s that they found the rest of the city, and then they started thinking, well, maybe this is really Troy. But any thought process for Troy would be that it's a fake area. It's a mythical area. It's not real. And they throw it into the same category as the Bible. That if they don't have a massive amount of data on it, then they categorize it mythical. So then when you study the Bible, you can see all these Bible characters and Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, and people say, well, when was that? Well, that was Bible times. That was a long time ago. You know, it's maybe it's even so mythical we don't even know what it is. But in actuality, it's connectable to connect the Bible history to modern history, and then it's disconcerting that when you're studying these topics and you get into who was King David or somebody, Solomon or something, and they say, well, these guys weren't really real, you know, and then it's disconcerting because religiously you might have this idea that you know, absolutely King Solomon lived, but the historians and archaeologists come with an atheistic ideology, and they're always trying to disprove these things. But then, to my happiness, these ancient cities like Gath or Sodom and Gomorrah, or you know, all these things that are disputed, then they find them, the archaeologists find them, and then all of a sudden, and maybe you see that they've been telling you for 150 years that isn't real, and then see, I believed this to be real, and then you have the data that says, yes, this is real. And that ends up being a whole lot of fun. So the same thing happens with Troy. Eusebius had the date 1183 BC. I don't think we can get really close. It's not until the Olympiads that we start being able to cross-reference off of the Olympiads, Kings versus the Olympiad, which is the 4-year games, and so it becomes difficult. We can't exactly place Troy, but it gets very close to this time, and I just think, okay, 1200, 1150, something like that. And that's when the fall of Troy happened. And why this is important is because Troy is over here. It's really a hot spot. It's going to be a hot spot for trade, and you also have a lot of people groups here. We can put the Shemites on here, right? And the Hamites, because we have Heth, who's the Hittite. So this is really a hot spot of trade. Turkey, and you can tell even now that it is a hot spot of trade. Lots of wars went back and forth through here. It's just a very hard place to. If you're attacking from the west, it's a very hard place to attack, but it's a lot easier to defend from the east because you have this massive amount of population that can get resourced together and push, and you're pushing together forces, Western forces and Middle Eastern forces right across here all the time. So it's really a hot spot. When you also think together that you have the sons of Shem, you have the Lydians here, and very close. I'm sure the Lydians and the Japhethites and even Heth, the Hittites, had a hand in this area, and so it's just very back and forth. It's a mix of cultures. If everybody was okay with that, you'd be fine, but you know, it's just like your neighbors. You know, do you get along with your neighbors all the time, or your family? It just doesn't happen. We have to have that forgiveness and repentance all the time, or there's just a pressure cooker all the time. So this is from east attacking west, like the Persian army attacking Greece. Well, it's a lot easier to defend on the Greek side too. See, so this is one of those spots that is just has a lot of armies go through it at any given time. So you can see Troy right in the center of this trade area, which benefits them, but also makes them a magnet of people trying to come against them. So we have the story of the Iliad and the Odyssey, and that's pretty fun. If you haven't read that, I recommend reading the Iliad. That's the battle itself. I mean, it's quite graphic with people getting killed and all that sort of thing. So if it's, what you could get out of it is you're reading an actual battle written by Homer, but it's one of the oldest and greatest pieces of Western literature that are available. A quite awesome thing that most anything else does not get to boast of that. So the Iliad would cover the battle, which we've all heard about, the fall of Troy with the Trojan horse, and everybody after that are thinking that use the expression Trojan horse. This is a gift that somebody's trying to give you and trying to take you down. So you got to check everything out, not just take it at face value. So you see this all over Western cultures because this ripple did go forward from here. But what happens is one of the drifters that's trying to get back to the Greeks is Ulysses. And so we have the Odyssey. Homer also wrote that, and it's fanciful for a lot of reasons. It's worth reading. And it does have all this, magic and gods and things like that. Since I'm a monotheist, then I don't really go for some of the stuff in there. But at the same time, it's very interesting to get the literary perspective of the Greeks from about maybe like 750 BC, which is a few hundred years after the fall of Troy. Here, I'll read a little bit of the Iliad. That me this holy protestation make by hell and hell's inviolable lake. I tried whatever in the Godhead lay, but gangred members must be lopped away before the nobler parts are tainted to decay. And then there's others, the floods by nature enemies to land, and proudly swelling with their new command, remove the living stones that stop their way, and gushing from their source, augment the sea. So this is really good as far as the literature standpoint. And then there are other books that follow. Nennius. Nennius is the first one. Well, another book talks about the chronicle of Brutus. And Brutus is the father of the British. It's where we get the word Britain from. It's from Brutus, where they started calling it the land of Bruton, and then that land of Bruton changed to the British. Fun thing about that is the story picks up. Okay, well, what's fun with it is it's another story that's similar to the Ulysses, but I'd say it's a little bit less fanciful, but it still does have, like, say, giants in it. And whenever you put something like with giants in it, then the historians and archaeologists, they just blow their tops over that and say, no, that's all fake and stuff. But anyway, Aeneas is one of the refugees from Troy and ends up coming over here to the peninsula of Italy. And so that's where things pick up here. We have Aeneas, who was in the Trojan War here, and we can see he went over historically to, in the time to the Italian peninsula, and he's got a lot of boats and army people, so they do what army people do. They land and then they start killing people. So it's just this automatic tragedy. The offshoot of that is Brutus. So here are the Italian genealogies that go down pre-Rome, because Rome is a city, Italy is an area, and then we know the Italian peninsula. Now we think of Rome as being really big, but then it's iconic to its own city. Well, its own city is Rome, founded by Romulus in 753. So when we go back before there were actually people. There's people to establish a city. It's not just that there's no people there. So when we go to the chronicon of Eusebius, then we get this extra piece of data that goes back to about 1100 BC, and then the shoot, 1200 BC, 1150, and then we have an offshoot of that, because the genealogy that goes down to Brutus then is here, Brutus, and that is fabulous as far as the history goes. In Nennius we have the genealogy to Brutus, where we get Britain, and then these are the life bars. We don't know how long they actually lived, but we do have their names, and so then you can put them in there as an approximation. And so Nennius gives us these other offshoots of the Scots, the Franks, the Romans, and these are from Hesitio, one of the brothers from Alanus. Alanus is real important because he also has other sons that populate the European area. But this genealogy goes all the way back to Japheth, and it's just fabulous that we have that, because it's a secondary source. And you zoom all the way out, and you're looking for some enthusiasm, because we have this secular world with atheism abounding and everybody teaching evolutionism, and everybody teaching you that monkeys turned into black people and gray people and white people and all this kind of stuff. And then if you're like me and you're like, wait, is that really the way it is? And as a chemist, I absolutely can't fathom it happening. I studied it for decades, and absolutely the complexity of the cell, etc. It's so complex. It's mind-boggling. Just like nobody would say a computer wrote its own computer program. It had a programmer. And then you see that the fossil record is really the flood record. It just blows away so much. If that geologic record is a bunch of sedimentary layers because of the flood, because of the earth getting smashed to oblivion, then you've got billions of years that are said to have happened that didn't happen. You have detailed records that go back to Shem, Ham, Japheth, and Noah, and then you don't have anything. But then you have a line by the people in academia that say, for 40,000 years, people were hunters and gatherers, and they ate food. People ate food, So anyway, as a person that believes the living God is real, and then when I looked at all history put together, this is the piece of all history put together, I didn't see this vast amount of data that pointed to historically that evolution being true. I found this. We see the center and all exploration just effervescing out from that. In the South, the same exact thing. This effervescing shape of history unfolding. When we go over Nennius, we see how human this endeavor is. We see the move. Brutus takes a bunch of ships, many ships, and he looks very threatening to everywhere he goes, because he's landing on islands out here, lands in Africa, lands in Spain, and it says he goes through the what does he call it? The Horns of Hercules, which that was the word they used for the Strait of Gibraltar, what we use now. There is this. Brutus is not sure if he's on the right journey, so he consults the priestess, and he gets this prophecy. This is kind of fun one. Brutus, there lies beyond the Gaelic bounds an island which the western sea surrounds. By giants once possessed, now few remain to bar thy entrance or obstruct thy reign. To reach that happy shore thy sails employ, there fate decrees to raise a second Troy, and found an empire in thy royal line, which time shall ne'er destroy nor bounds confine. So that was a prophecy that was spoken over Brutus. So as he goes out, he would get supplies every so often, but then from the mainland, and then threaten the people. You see various stories, more human stories than Ulysses. The people being threatened, that sort of thing. One instance, giants throw stones at his ships. If you saw over 100 ships coming at you, then you'd be a little bit worried. But this is a place where Brutus ends up, which time shall ne'er destroy nor bounds confine. And then you just look at what the English did, because as they got pushed out by trade routes being all cut off in the Middle East, then you have the expansion. Well, if we can't go there because we're all getting chopped down by the Middle East, we'll go around Africa. Okay, we'll trade with India. Okay, we'll go farther. We'll trade with China. Wait. Can we go the other way? Can we? We find a new land. We find the United States, or we find North America and South America. So, okay, you could say Christopher Columbus, and of course the Vikings before Christopher Columbus. Yes. I do understand, but I just think about that they really spread out, and then the last lines of that prophecy are, nor bounds confine. So there are the various perils are pointed out by Geoffrey of Monmouth, because he's doing the British history, but then he's really wanting to zoom in on Brutus himself. So there's a lot of resolution there, and it's a lot of fun getting that book. And you can get that book in the box below, and also you could probably just find it online. You don't have to get it through Amazon and get it in the box below, but you can get it wherever. You can find it here and there. Well, so you can see the fancifulness of this and the amazingness of studying history in this way. So if you're going to go along this course of studying England, it'd be really fun. Genesis, then Josephus, which is an interpretation, then Eusebius, going along this area, is where you pick up that. And of course Eusebius quoting from all these Greek and Middle Eastern sources. The Iliad to read, Odyssey, which would be directly right after it, and then you have the voyage of Brutus here, and that's found in Geoffrey of Monmouth and the Brute Chronicles. But if you want to get a little bit earlier than that is Nennius. It's nicer to read the earliest version and then come up. And I think history is done a little bit backwards, because what we do is we have our starting place down here, and it's just the way we have to be. It's if you're in England and Elizabeth II is there right now, then you don't have any other reference point. So here we are with the presidents of the United States. You just start where you are, but as you get older, you start filling in this stuff, and you start realizing that not everything you've been taught is the way it is. So, yeah, you have King Lear back here somewhere. There he is. Oh, no, Leo? No. There he is. See, so Shakespeare wrote of a lot of the people here in the history of Britain, and it has an incredible history. When you get the biblical understanding and start looking at the spread of the nations through that metric, and then you come in here and start seeing the people groups, you're realizing that these are people that know each other. They're family members. These children of Javan that go out here to Italy and then out here to Britain, and then Alanus, who goes in here, and their children are right here in Europe, bumping up against the other Japhethites. It's okay. Everybody's going back to mom and dad for a while for the picnic, until these population centers just get bigger and bigger and bigger. And then more and more people just say, no, you're not crossing my space anymore. You're not getting it. Mom and dad die. Then there's a new mom and dad, a new center. And so instead of having to go down there and having to cross all these other neighbors, they say, well, let's have Thanksgiving dinner over here. So each people group keeps on getting truncated smaller and smaller into their zone, and then when their population is going up, now they're an actual force that starts saying, hey, we might be brothers, but we don't want you over here anymore. It's the same thing that happens all the time. Wars. And Jesus said, don't worry about wars and rumors of wars. And he said, the end is not yet. But then the hope is this. The hope is this. Jesus came, died on the cross for us, and we have forgiveness through him. We put our trust in him, and then we have repentance, and we have forgiveness. And if we can stop doing stupid things, repent of doing stupid things, then we can stop hurting our neighbors. And if we can forgive our neighbors for the things they've done, we don't have as many problems. So I recommend that to everybody. I think this study is fabulous. I'm really excited about it. I hope that you are learning things too. I hope that you can go through this. You can check out some of the books there in the box, and then see if what I read to you was anything useful or correct. And then I hope you have a great week. So remember, in 2 days, tomorrow will be yesterday. So do the best you can today, and I'll see you next time.